and they'll say, oh, my mother did this, or my father did that, or my son did this. And so they're going to see in their mind's eye an event that is linked with how they feel now. Are you with me, sir? Okay. And then when they speak about that person, they'll say, my mother, and they have an affective charge. That means they're seeing their mother in their mind's eye. A historical event is being awakened that is linked with a pattern of how they're looking at the world now. So what we do at that moment, we externalize the theater of the mind's eye, and we used to do it with role play. Now we don't do it with role play. We do it with an object. So, and I'll say, pick something to represent, and I call it a placeholder for your mother. So they'll pick an object, and it could be any object, and they'll put it somewhere. And they're not seeing their mother in the room, but it's the database of all the memories of the mother that are now available. So when they look there, they're seeing here the mother, and that awakens the neural associations around the mother. And they'll talk about, oh, when my mother did this, or my mother did that, and they get a reaction and they remember their old history. So they're remembering a deficit. Now, years ago, we used to play out the affect around the deficit to get some kind of cathartic thing. Now we go immediately to what we call a reversal, and we invent an ideal mother or an ideal father who would have done exactly what our genes had anticipated a mother would do. So if someone says, my mother was always sick, then we would reverse it and have an ideal mother who said, and I put what I call a bookmark, just an outline of what an ideal mother would do, and I'll make it dramatized. The ideal mother says, if I had been your ideal mother when you were 10 years old, I wouldn't be sick. So instead of people remembering all the old history and agonizing over it again, we now know neurologically when people re-feel an emotion, they reinforce the old memory. So now we immediately go and create a new memory, because the old memory is what's controlling our vision of the world, and we try to make immediately at least an outline of a new memory that will have satisfied those basic needs at the right age with the right kinship relationship, so that we stop looking at the wrong age to get it from the wrong people and getting the endless frustration of that. So, and little by little, as people work, we shift history, and this history, the changes here are not about what we express, but the new memory we take in, because that's going to change how we react to the world today, because how we react today is absolutely based on history. So that's the basis of this work, to make new synthetic, symbolic memories to overcome the deficits of the past so we can look into the future. That was as far as we went until 7 years ago, when we saw there was another, yes?
Can you say that again? Make new symbolic,
new
synthetic symbolic memories to correct the deficits of the past.
Exactly.
So that we can look at
the ideal parents do. And then that will shift, hopefully, how we look at the present and no longer see the present as an endless repetition of history. So this work is taking in a new memory. Now, sometimes people can't believe a new memory. They just can't take it in. And it opened up a whole other way of understanding that was already implied earlier, and I won't go into all the steps of that, of how it was already implied. Now, remember I said we're made out of storage. And remember I spoke about the fundamental pushes of life, satisfaction of survival of the self, survival of the species, okay? But there's two other basic pushes. The push to make things whole. And the more I'm reading now philosophically and also about quantum theory, and very interesting books about that, there's this endless feeling of wholeness that we're connected to. And we are driven to experience wholeness. And when things are not whole, we just go a little bit nuts. And I'll just show you how fundamental that is. Those of you who've seen this, bear with me, you see it again. So I'm going to do so. And what happens to people, to you? You see, I made you have movement. You did. So when you see incompletions, there's a part of you that wants to make the completion, even though I'm just making a bloody circle in the air. And if it's not complete, at that moment is frustration. When there's completion, there's relief. Things are as they should be. So that's a powerful thing. Now, not only is there a push to make things whole, but beyond that is to do justice. Because justice means to make things right, make things balanced, and that we're made to do justice. And every time I say we're made to do justice and it's a universal push, I immediately think of human saying, what do you mean do justice? The world is full of injustice. Or if you pick up the newspaper, then I look at, there's two kinds of justice. There's exclusive justice, which is justice for me and my kind, and everybody who doesn't believe like me is dead meat and they're going to go to hell. Okay? Or inclusive justice, where it's justice for everyone. And there's exclusive justice if we've awakened the push for justice too soon. Okay? Now, when I put it like that, I come to the root of R-O-O-T and R-O-U-T-E of the next process. That because we're influenced by words, remember I said we come from storage, genetic stuff, autobiographical history, but we're also created and formed and informed by stories. The stories, the words we hear about injustice have a powerful influence on us, okay? If we are young and haven't had our basic needs met, and we hear stories or see events where there's injustice, an incredibly unconscious and powerful event takes place. Because we are compelled to make things whole when we hear stories of the absence of someone in someone's life with an empty space, because we know what a family network should consist of, or what the whole fabric of culture should consist like. If we hear stories, let's say in the Civil War, that great-great-great-grandmother lost her husband in the Civil War, and because of that emptiness, the next generations didn't have fathers, etc., and all kinds of shifts happened. If we hear a story like that, or if we even hear a story that mom lost her daddy when she was 4 years old, one part of us immediately feels the compassion of that. And we fill, I call that holes in roles. We fill the empty space with a portion of our psyche in an unconsciously constructed movie. We don't consciously construct it. A movie we don't see, like a dream, but a movie in which we are the star. Okay? So if we hear stories where mom didn't have a father, one part of us, without us knowing it, steps in and becomes the father, the husband to the mother. Do you follow? Do you follow that? That happens instantly and with powerful effect. And I call it the Messiah gene. It's the part of the self that wants to heal everything. We all have it. And we're all longing for the Messiah to heal the whole universe. But we all have that genetic impulse to do the healing. And every time we hear stories of uncompletion, one, especially if it's in our family system or in our cultural religious system, one part of us steps in to fill that role. Now the reason I say Messiah gene is because the word Messiah implies the one and only, okay? And when we get in the position of being the one and only, we're no longer the other. And remember I said aggression and sexuality are bound together. They're bound together by the ideal, by the real parents giving limits. All those feelings have got to have boundaries, and they get limits. But if there's no other, those two energies bust loose.